Okay, so what I wanted to talk with you all today was about Scrum framework and high-performing teams. So I know that none of you really work within engineering, so can you tell me what you actually know about high-performing teams or the Scrum framework? And a fist of 5, 1 being I know nothing, 5 being I'm a resident expert and I know this cold and I don't really have to be here. Okay, so we've got everything from 3 down to, yeah, like there should be a sign hand signal for I don't know what you're talking about. That's rock, paper, scissors version. Okay, so what this session really is, and what the purpose here for this is to help you understand what the Scrum framework is, because this is how the engineering teams as a whole operate, and then how we employ those values from Scrum over in high-performing teams, which is what we're trying to get our teams in general up to over on the engineering side. So the outcome or the objective of this is so that you feel that you have the basis for this work, so that when you ever do have to engage with some of these teams, you'll kind of know, at least have the language and the framework, and kind of know where we're coming from. And then conversely, we can also help you and say, hey, this is what we're trying, can we utilize whatever you're doing as well? What's in it for you? Hopefully this will give you, like I said, that common language that you have, and that will help you just be more familiar with and not always see us as the other, because sometimes I do think we are a little bit of other. So engagement from that perspective, all I ask is that open mind and ask questions when you have them, and they are heartily encouraged. And roles. I'll obviously be up here just teaching / facilitating a little bit, but yell out questions as you have them. So we're going to recap. We had the 0 of Scrum and high-performing teams, 2 out of 3. So that sounds about right. Let me go ahead and get started then. So let's talk about Scrum framework. So the Scrum framework right there. Do you have questions about that?
The retrospective is usually focused on process type things.
The retrospective can be focused on anything that the team feels that it needs to be talking about. We're generally, asking those kinds of questions. What's working for us? What's not working for us? I've heard it discussed as, and I've implemented as, what do we like as a team? What do we long for as a team? What do we loathe doing? What do we love doing? And you're trying to ask those big questions. They're going to dig deep. So do you know the concept of powerful questions or introspective questions? They're those big open-ended questions that people just can't be yes, no. They're going to really force someone to think about what they want and why. Okay. Did that answer what you were talking for? Okay. Yes.
Does it ever happen where the stakeholders change their minds about something when they're in the middle of a sprint? And then
I said, never. Well, could a stakeholder change his or her mind? They're like, oh yeah, we absolutely don't want that. Well, yeah, and it could happen. But the good news is that sprint is only 2 weeks long. We can reshuffle this backlog as needed and say, okay, this market completely changed. This is why Scrum is so popular, because it's, it's based on late-breaking requirements. We can accommodate those. We don't say no, because we can make that happen. We can bring that next story in, and we can make that change based on that. So that's one of the most popular aspects of it, because it is flexible. It does allow a team to shift, to pivot as needed. It's not be like, oh, we're marching down this, just like this. We must go in this direction. We're like, no, clearly this road isn't working anymore. We need to go this way. So if the market changes, boom, we can actually help make that happen. Okay. So if we're good here, I actually also wanted to start talking then about the Scrum values. So when people were developing Scrum, and this was back in the 90s and the like, they wisely started thinking about what values are missing from our work life. And so there are 5 values associated with Scrum. And those are commitment, openness, courage, it's a U, not an R, focus, and respect. And the metaphor that we can use for this actually is, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to suffer through more of my fantastic drawing again. We use this as a tree metaphor. And the reason we use this as a tree metaphor, because based on how we water and how we encourage these particular values, this is how we start growing these values within the team, and we'll see them exhibit it. So as a team, let's talk about these. Let's back this up here. So looking at the Scrum framework diagram, can you talk to me about where you might see focus or courage or respect or openness or commitment?
Well, sure. So the courage part, you don't want that groupthink thing to come in where people are afraid to disagree with an idea,
Right,
because then we don't have that innovation take place.
exactly. So let's make all that sticky. So Amy, right over next to you, I have some cards and they've got questions written on them.
Okay.
And there's tape up there. So if you guys wouldn't mind, go ahead and pick any of the cards and put a piece of tape on it. And then let's come up here to these diagrams and tape it where you think that question is answered. And then talk about what you learned from it. This is like a horrible game of Go Fish.
Well, I reward the people that sit close to the camera.
We didn't want to take ours.
They get hurt.
Oh, well played, well played.
Gosh. All right, we have extras. Do you want this?
Somebody will get to go twice. It doesn't matter.
All right, maybe I'll take one.
So just grab the lovely painter's tape and come on up. Okay, tape that card up there on the board next to where you think that question might be answered. What is in a product backlog? So what is in a product backlog?
All the stakeholders' opinions and requests.
Bingo, good job.
This is easy because it's already labeled.
Okay, what is the Scrum framework?
It's the key features of how you're going to move from something someone wants to a finished product using backlog, sprint, backlog, sprint, daily stand-up, sprint review, and retrospectives.
Okay.
What are the characteristics of a high-performing team?
Yep. You're like, you're all right. So let me ask you then, was this a new metaphor for you?
I hadn't thought about it like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I mean, I knew that these kinds of things should be present in any organization,
Mhm.
especially if they're going to be successful. But I hadn't really thought about it as a tree comment.
Okay, awesome. Was it helpful?
It was.
Thank you. Even my drawer. All right, Amy. Okay.
I have again. What is in the sprint backlog?
Mhm.
So that would be where you figure out what you can fit into that approximately
Yes.
2-week period of work based
Exactly.
on what from here the product backlog is feasible.
Mhm.
What kinds of features or values
Good job.
to be.
You're doing well. Okay. So, are there any questions here that we didn't cover and that you still have? Yes.
I kind of have a question that might not fit here. Like, how is the Kanban system similar and different from this?
Kanban is a completely different talk, but the short answer is this is because we're pushing things from here up into the sprint. Kanban is a pull system. So as you have items that are in, and we can talk about work in progress and how to, limiting work in progress, but Kanban is a pull. So as one thing moves from one phase to the next, you can pull a card or a task forward. So think of it as push versus pull is the short answer. And we could cover Kanban at a different length. Because actually people upstairs are very interested in Kanban too, and it's probably not a bad idea if I just did a lunchtime talk on it. Yeah. So I have two things that I want to ask you then in closing. So number one, fist of 5, 0 being I know nothing about Scrum or high performing teams. Closed fist. 5, knowing I'm an expert, I can lead this talk, I'm good to go. Where do you feel like you are now after watching this? I'm actually going to view this as a huge win because you were at a 0 before, and now you're at a 3. Everybody's going up. I'm like, yay. Okay. Secondly, one thing that I like to do when I close out a session is ask people for one word that they think describes how they will go forward then to the rest of their day. Can you implement something like this? So what one word would you use to describe you going forward now?
Inspired.
Thank you. I'm waiting for someone to say hungry.
I just think I understand more than I did before. I wasn't
Yeah.
Just understanding.
Awesome, thank you. feel like the pressure's on.
All right, I'll take the pressure off. I don't know that it's a word, but I think that the analogy I would say is that I think I'm now welcome kind of at the grown-ups table. Like I can sit in some of these meetings and hear some of this terminology and it makes a little more sense and I don't kind
So
of
this is
feel like it's all
inclusive.
washed. Thank you, that's better.
Okay. Wow, that's hugely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
Similar, I think, eye-opening, because I just
I'm
didn't
actually
really
kind of
know.
blowing. Maybe that touch-up button really does work because honestly, you guys, this is huge feedback because I didn't think about on this side of the fence, we have not been inclusive, welcoming you all because we have terminology that sounds strange. And if we would actually take time to break it down and explain it, it might be a little bit easier. You know, we could have these conversations. You're like, hey, I see you having,